Good afternoon, everyone. This is The Joys of Living Great on the Win Win Women Television Network. I'm Faye, and I am joined by the other Joys of Living Great women who are so committed to being with us every week. Thank you, ladies, for being here. We're starting our program today as a continuation of what we've been doing since August. And I have to tell you that when we first started, we had no idea that there would be so many facets to going back to school. Going back to school has opened so many avenues for discussion that's why we're still doing going back to school. But we also learned that not everybody goes back to school at the same time. Some students go back to school in August and some go back in September. The fall is just the time when even young students go to school and adult students go to school. So since our show is set up for women all over the world, women who have children who are going back to school, women who may have gone back to school themselves, we're still continuing with back to school. Today's episode is in honor of the support staff. Who would have ever thought and who would have ever dreamed what influence the support staff at the school can have on a student's life? That is such an interesting topic that we decided we will devote the entire program today to honoring the support staff. There are a lot of people that are involved when our students are going back to school. And we would just like to touch on some, but if we miss any, by all means, let us know. Don't forget, in our Facebook group, The Joys of Living Great, you can join at any time. Let us know. We are not trying to overlook anyone and anyone's role. Katrina, can you think of a single or maybe one or two support staff persons who may have been instrumental in your going to school or your son going to school?
Yes, when I was in college, I had a guidance counselor, and she was very helpful in helping me out, choosing my classes, choosing a career. It even came a time when I had to sit out a semester, and she encouraged me, gave me some encouraging words, how to exit and then how to enter back into school. And it was a nice transition. And I did graduate in the 4 years. But she was there to help me each semester, choosing classes, trying to make choices, making sure everything was all right. And, children do need that. Teenagers, young adults need that. Someone to talk to and help them make decisions. And I thought the guidance counselor was very instrumental.
That's a good one to point out, because in the description for today's show, I said that often the support staff is that non-parental person or persons who actually can have the opportunity to be close enough to the student to talk to them, to give them guidance, to share wisdom with them, because in most cases they are already adults or more mature adults. So the guidance counselor would be a great one. That's a good one for as a support staff person. Did anybody else have support from a particular guidance counselor or guidance person in high school or in college? No, not really. Well, the guidance counselor in our high school was the person who actually helped those students who were non-athletes. Athletes have a special path for getting into college, I believe. And I say that because that's what I think, but it may or may not be true, but I think they have a special path. And the coaches for the athletic program actually helped them, but the guidance counselors actually helped the students who were not athletes to find the colleges that they might be accepted, to show them the colleges or point out the colleges based on what courses or subjects they wanted to take, or what they wanted or what they thought at the time to be their major, to guide them. And sometimes the guidance counselors would even find the means or help the students with application fees. So they had resources that were very, very helpful for students who needed them. So guidance counselor, yes, it's one. Brenda, can you think of one that a support person who may have been an instrument or a catalyst to someone you knew or to you when you were in school? But being a teacher, you might know more than one support type person.
Well, there are many, Faye, and I do remember the nurse. The nurse was always caring in our schools for our students if they had a problem or any kind of medical condition or problem. They were always there and very supportive of getting in touch with the parent, contacting them and keeping medication. Even when we were on trips, I had to make sure that I had all of the medications and everything, all of the slips, and document everything. So the nurse was very, very instrumental in that support, is one of the support staff and counselors as well. But I can remember the nurse, yeah.
The nurse, yes, the nurse, the one that if you were really, really good at faking that you didn't want to go to class, you could go and lay down on the cot for a while. The nurse, yes, that is an important support staff person, and someone that we don't think that much about. But now, the nurse's role nowadays, I believe, has grown into a much more, not just on the medical care side, but also into the mental and emotional health side. And Crystal probably can explain that to us better because she's in that field, y'all.
Well, what I did know, see, when I was in school, we didn't have support from like the mental health standpoint when I was in school. But now in my field, I usually go to schools at times and actually work with some of my youth in the schools. And they're very, very supportive. I explained to them, that I need a space where we can be, everything's confidential. I don't want anybody thinking that he's coming to see me. So I usually come in first and, sign in with the school and tell them I need such and such a student, give them whatever paperwork that they need, granting permission for that to take place. And I go tuck myself away and they bring the student to me. And then I let the student leave first, is keeping it confident. And they're very, very cooperative. They try and find space for me, because they understand the delicacy of dealing with children who have those different diagnoses and not just mental health, but emotional health too. Some of them emotionally are unstable. So it's very, very comforting to know. Child study team staff, awesome. We're even included in their child study team meetings when the youth is due to get their services reevaluated and get their IEPs, updated and redone. We are invited to take part in that. And I think that's a big help. Like we said a couple of shows back, that village thing, man, it really should incorporate schools, neighborhoods, churches. I mean, everyone, if everyone could just be more open and cooperative and supportive to these young people in school, it would be like so much more of a smooth transition. I think it would be a lot less apprehension and fear from the student's standpoint, because they're afraid. Listen, we're authority figures to them. And that's just something for them to resist if they feel like they're being attacked or if they're fearful. So when we make things be more at ease for them, I think you get much more of a success rate with everything.
Well, the obviously the role that you play and the profession that you're in is definitely a great asset as a support staff for the school system, for the education system. That's a great role. And I'm so happy that people like yourself are in those roles. Now, this is one that I'm just going to throw out there. And I know all of you know this individual, and we're not talking about any particular person, but this role has been so important. And I can remember the time when this individual knew everybody that was supposed to be with him when he pulled off. So if you weren't there, he might wait and he'll look down the street to see if you're on your way. And I am talking about the bus driver. The bus driver was just so important and bears such an important role even today, because students are still taking the bus to school, although a lot of children are driven to school by their parents or their grandparents, or someone who is there to take them in the car and pick them up. But still, there are a lot of children who are still getting on the school bus to go to work, to go to school. They do not take city transit or local transit. They're getting on the school bus. So the school bus driver played a big role. Did any of you actually ride the school bus to school?
Yeah, Faye, I rode the school bus to school when I was going to high school and junior high. I live far enough away to take the bus. And the bus driver knew the kids in the neighborhood because the bus driver would run the same route. He got to know the kids by name and their families because he was familiar with the area. And the bus driver would help diffuse some of the troubles on the bus, because if the kids knew him and he knew them, they built somewhat of a rapport. Sometimes some kids wanted to act up and they wouldn't, because, say, Mr. Johnson was driving the bus and Mr. Johnson would say, okay, Michael, you're not going to act up today, right? And he was like, no, he go sit down. But some things happen. Sometimes kids would smoke on the back of the bus or try to mess with someone, but the bus driver helped a lot to diffuse that.
Yes, and sometimes, that when children have issues or concerns and they're leaving home and you don't know what's behind them when they close that door, but then they walk out and they go to the bus stop.
Yeah.
And when that bus door opens and it's a smiling face and the person saying, good morning, or hey, where are you going? What you got in that bag today? Something to them, it really makes a difference to start that child's day, maybe in a different direction from what he or she has left behind. So often the bus driver is the first friendly face that a student may see in the morning.
Yeah.
And then when they're getting off the bus, and that same friendly, kind person who cares about everybody that's on the bus and have learned them by name and probably knows their families says, bye, have a good day. That might be, you're separating that child from what they have to face when they walk through that door again. So you never know what's going on at home. But those support staff people, such as the bus drivers, play such an important role in developing character for the students who see them, because they start to emulate what behaviors the bus driver, the nurses, the counselors actually have, how they act and how they speak. So these are all important roles. Now, one of the other ones, which might also include students, would be crossing guards. How important, or do would you put the crossing guards role up there with the other support staff? Well, where would you put that on a scale of 1 to 10?
Okay, well, I would put it at a 10 because I grew up taking public transportation to school. So they were there when I got off that bus. They were there on that corner to help me cross the street, smile, the whole thing. They were very important. They just secured the last stage of that safety element for the kid to make sure they got down to that school door and got in the schoolyard or the school door safely. They were very important, very caring. And I've seen quite a few of them kind of stay past their post time to make sure everyone was, securely across the street or on their buses and stuff like that. It was amazing. And then they even mentored. I know I was a little safety, one of the mini crossing guards. They had safeties that they mentored in this thing. And I did that as well. So they taught us, how to be, obedient, how to listen, how to be safe crossing corners. Because, city is different than the country, or rural areas. So city, you had to be careful, of crossing. We were at our schools, the ones I went to were right on major strips, so we had to be extra careful and precautious. So they were very important in my school life, as far as being supportive. Very, very important.
That crossing guard again is kind of reminds me of the school bus driver, because they can be so friendly. And eventually, because they see the same students all the time, they get to know the students' names and the students get to know their names. It's like, they look for them. The students start to look for that person. They start to look for Miss Mary to be on the corner when they get ready to cross the street. Are there any other support staff members that you all can think of that we should be paying homage to today?
I think of the custodial staff. They always would clean the rooms to perfection almost. And so they were very instrumental as a support team for the school. They just did their job beyond what they needed to do, in my school at least. Yeah, so they always cleaned the school, made sure it was nice, it was conducive for learning, for the children. And yeah, custodial staff. And they weren't always respected, though, I don't think. I mean, by the students. I don't, I know as a teacher, I would always tell my children to respect all people, because they're people and we have to respect them. It doesn't matter what job they do, that we would have to respect them. So my students knew that they needed to respect all people in the building, children, custodial staff. It doesn't matter, because sometimes you hear children say, well, they're just the cleaning people, but I would speak to them about that and say they do their job. They're keeping the room clean for students, teachers, and keeping it safe and clean, sanitized. So that's where I would help the children think about that for the custodians. Yeah, they were
I think
respected.
As children, we don't probably realize the value of the custodial staff, because if it were not for the custodial staff, you'd come back to a classroom that's not clean, unsanitary, and you would, if you think children bring the colds and sniffles home with the custodial staff, imagine what it would be like if you didn't have that custodial staff doing what they do every night, every evening. And then most of the schools did have staff that was, present during the day, but the nighttime cleaning was actually contracted. So there were vendors who actually had those contracts for the schools, and I believe that they still do. So as contractors, it's their responsibility to do more. And even now, with the outbreak of COVID and the other diseases that are going around, it is so very important that everything is cleaned down. As teachers, you probably did some of that cleaning yourselves, right, Brenda?
Most
You're
definitely,
muted.
yes, most definitely I did do some of the cleaning myself as well, which the custodians would say, you don't have to do that, Miss Sawyer, but I felt it necessary because, I thought it was a part of my job as well, to make sure that it was, always make sure, I always said, make the next person's job a little easier. So it didn't hurt by helping them pick up papers or something, or, a crayon so no one would slip and fall, hazardous things like that. So I would, I wouldn't be, it wouldn't be a problem for me to help clean a little bit. And they'd say, Miss Sawyer, why are you doing that? That's our job, but it's okay. I did it.
That's
I enjoyed
probably
it.
like when you have someone coming to clean your house and
Yeah.
you clean the house before they come. Yeah, right. But the custodial staff is critical in the whole realm of things. But I think as students, because they're younger and don't realize that these people have a job, and it's an important one within the system to keep them safe and to keep their environment clean. One of the other, and you'll probably say this because I know you're going to say, well, that's because you love to eat. But I thought that the cafeteria workers were very important. I thought they were very important. And there were some who actually really cared about the students, and because we grew up in a small town, people knew people and they knew the families, and there were families who didn't have as much. Nobody was rich, but so the staff would know who to give the biggest piece of chicken to, or who to give 2 hot dogs, instead of 1. So it was like they really cared. Some of them really cared, and they took the time to actually help the students. Did you all have lunches in school, or did you take your lunch?
I used to bring my lunch sometimes, but sometimes I would eat there as well. But in my school, unfortunately, seemed like they had the same thing every day. So I don't know why, don't ask. But sometimes I would bring my lunch as well. Yeah, but I do remember the cafeteria people being very, very friendly, to the students.
I know all through school for me, I ate lunch at school. I ate the school lunch. There were times, like a few year spans, a couple of times where I went to a private school and I had to take my lunch. But I've experienced both, and school lunch for me was very good. Listen, we had home cooked. I'm getting ready to tell my age. Lunches at my school. I mean, they had the stewed tomatoes. I mean, real hot lunch, like for real, like cooked. Because they were able to do it back then. I guess it was a better situation as far as sanitation and trusting the staff that you hire, to do the lunch for you. But it was delicious. Oh yeah, we had homemade macaroni and cheese and stewed tomatoes, and listen, it was great. It was great. I think the first line, because I've worked with youth that dealt with, staff that teased them about not having money on their accounts. See, now there are accounts, electronic accounts that they keep track of how much these students eat. And I've heard stories, and not several, where the youth and families were ridiculed by the lunch staff because they didn't have enough money and threatened to cut off lunch in front of all the rest of the other students. And I was like, wow, that's not what I remember it to be. So when I was glad my son, we talked about the bus driver, a beautiful icebreaker for him to have a good day, because she made his day. He made sure he told me about that. And the lunch woman, same thing. So he's had positive interactions with both of those support staff. And I think it helped carry him these first few weeks of school.
We have talked so much about support staff, and it's just because we have such great respect for everyone and anyone who has anything to do with educating our children. This is the Joys of Living Great, and we're on the Win-Win Women Television Network, which is streamed on Roku, Amazon Prime, Apple TV, and you can watch our shows on the Joys of Living Great YouTube channel. You can also join the Joys of Living Great Facebook page. It's a public page. Go to the Facebook, look for the Joys of Living Great in the search bar, join the group, bring your joy that you have, be able to share with us what your joy is, and you can post positive, affirming items that are going to encourage others. That's what we're all about. Our mission is to make sure that we're able to give other women of the world those joys that we've experienced, but also help you to find joy, help you to keep joy, and help you to share joy. This episode is just a continuation of back to school, and we have a couple more just to wrap up September, and then we're going to be through with back to school. Next month, we're starting off with October. Of course, you may know and may remember, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So we'll be doing breast cancer awareness, but leading into the holidays and giving and loving season, we will also be talking about finances. So stay tuned. Join us every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I am going to now ask that we talk a little bit about